Today's episode is awesome. We're going to take a little journey into the world of design with my guest, Hans Lorei. As we go into that journey, we're going to be talking about the relationship between music and design, how to develop taste, the difference and similarity between Four Non Blondes and Radiohead, two bands from the 1990s. We're going to touch on U2 and the Rolling Stones. And you may be thinking, Eric, how are we going to get to this place that we're talking about? Well, Hans Lorei, my guest, is a designer, but he began his career as a musician. Moved to Nashville, realized that music wasn't going to be his career path, got into real estate, and over time has developed into a design powerhouse in a variety of different markets, starting first with residential and then moving into multifamily and other aspects of design. And he is an expert when it comes to understanding what works, what touches the core of who we are as human beings when it comes to design. And we're going to talk about that today. So if you like discussions around creativity and how it relates to the experiences we have in life, even how we run our businesses, who we associate with, you're in the right place. And tell me what you think about this interview. Shoot me an email, eric@constructiongenius.com, because I had a great time in this conversation. And I figure if I'm having a good time, then you're going to have a good time. And I want you to hang through this conversation with us because it takes a little while to get going, but then when it gets going, it gets super interesting. And that's what I want you to really tap into is the interest that is in this episode. And specifically what's going to happen, and you know this is true, it's like you're going to listen to this conversation and it's going to spark your interest in other areas. It'll click other areas in for you that are important to you. And that's the benefit of listening to the dialogue that Hans and I have here today. So, enjoy this conversation. Thank you for listening to Construction Genius. Let's dive right in. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Hans, welcome to Construction Genius.
Thanks so much, Eric. It's great to be here.
I'm glad to have you on the show. Your core conviction is that how a space looks and feels largely determines how it rents and sells. And that's a perspective that you have as a designer. Please tell our audience why you have that perspective, how you developed it, and why it's important.
Yeah. So I really started my journey into this world as a real estate agent. I became a real estate agent and worked on a team where I was finding land for new construction. We were building, lots of single family homes and townhomes. I would find the dirt. We would get it under contract, do sort of preliminary diligence on it, and then, flip it to a builder and list what they built. I started doing that at the time, about 10 years ago when Nashville was really, really taking off and there was a big construction boom here. And all kinds of homes going up everywhere. And I started to really observe, as an agent that there were builders that were better than others. And, obviously quality is important, but just the way that things look and how cohesive they were, I saw immediately, it was like, oh, all these spaces that are, assuming it's priced correctly, right? If it's attractive and it feels good immediately, when people come in, they move faster than other units. And that was a thing that I noticed too, like as a buyer's agent, right? Like if I'm walking in a house with people and I walk in the front door, they know probably within 15 seconds of walking into a house, whether or not it's going to be, the house that they're going to buy or not. And that is not that's not a spreadsheet decision. That's not I guess it's in this school district and it costs this much and has this bedroom. It's like, oh no, this feels like the house that I have been envisioning in my mind on my journey, whether I can articulate that in bullet points or not. And so I just started to see like, a lot of these decisions again are just based on how people feel like immediately, right? First impression when they walk in the door. So what can you do with natural light? What can you do with ceilings? What can you do with finishes? What can you do with the layout of your property to make it feel open and intriguing and interesting and exciting and pique curiosity in people, so that when they come in, they're like, whether this is the condo that they're going to rent or a house they're going to buy or a space that they're going to lease, immediately they're like, oh man, this feels great. This is what I want.
Something you said earlier interests me, and I want to touch on it. It's a little a tangent, but you would find the dirt, you said.
Yes.
Okay, now it's interesting because I know many contractors, when they get to a certain point, they can get onto the development side of things. As a part, it's just sort of an offshoot of their business. And I understand you're looking at residential dirt, not necessarily commercial dirt. But
right.
In your time looking for dirt, what were some of the things that you learned in that process?
Well, I would say that it pays to be persistent, right? So, many of those deals, sometimes, you go up and bang a door and you just hit somebody right day, right time. Hey, I've been living with my mom and she just passed away a month ago and I'm ready to sell this house. Things like that would happen. And other times you meet somebody, there was one guy I remember meeting. It's not exactly a dirt finding story, but it's very much related. I met him I was doing an open house. I did an open house for a builder. They built these 2 beautiful new homes. He came to the open house, talked to him for 5 minutes, just kind of like eccentric guy. Yeah. Was me. It was probably 2 years later. I happened to give him a business card. He was like, hey, I'm moving to Hawaii. I have 3 houses in Nashville and I want to list them all with you. And it's just like, stuff like that, right? Like that you realize that, okay, if this is what I'm going to go after, it has to be a long-term campaign, right? And I'm at the beginning, we're just going to plant seeds. We're going to meet people. We're going to build relationships. And instead of trying to force things to happen, I just have to, basically have faith that if I put out the effort every day or every week,
yes,
eventually and continue to water my seeds, I'll eventually get some flowers and some nice fruits. It's not going to happen in 2 months, right? That's years.
Yeah, it's interesting. It reminds me of a classic sales thought that I always learn or I always think about, is that I cannot control productivity, but I can control activity. Yes. So if I focus on the right activity, then the productivity will come.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, I think that's so true.
So let me take you back into this idea of someone walking into a home and 15 seconds making a judgment. Now, when it comes to a house, I totally get that.
Yes.
What about a commercial space? How does that analogy apply between residential and commercial in your experience?
Again, the commercial world is something that I've dabbled in, very little. I have a little bit of experience. I've friends that have opened stores and I'm friends with, commercial contractors and commercial investors. But if you're a tenant, you wanted to open your studio or your marketing business or whatever, I think, again, maybe it's more of a spreadsheet decision because it is a business and it's just simply like, it can't be a solely emotional decision like so many home purchases are, but you're still going to walk into a space, right? Say like, this is what I've envisioned for my business. This is what I'm passionate about. This is where I see myself sitting. This is where I see myself meeting with clients. This is where I'm going to have employee meetings and our kitchen's going to be, right? And like, I think that's not going to be some decision that you're going to methodically make for hours as you walk through a space. You're going to know, I feel like in 20 seconds after you walk in the door, is this a place for me? And again, it's not my world. It's not, I'm not a commercial leasing agent. So I don't have a lot of experience doing that, but just what I know about business owners, what I know about myself, right? It's the same thing. Like you take an enormous amount of pride in your space and whether you can articulate it or not, you know what you want. Okay. And sometimes you can only know what you want when you see it.
Interesting. So let me explore this idea of design being a fundamental part of who we are as human beings. What makes good design?
It's such a good question. To me, I think what makes good design, there's a number of things. You could certainly look to nature and look to our past and look to the way people used to live. So if you incorporate, if you imagine, right, caveman, let's
Right.
say, wandering around outside. There's something really nice about wandering through an open plain, right? And going a hunt. You feel open, you feel exposed, right? You know, it's a little bit more risky, but it's also, there's a spirit of adventure right there. There's possibility in that openness and that sprawling space.
Uh-huh.
And if you go under a tree or into a cave, you know, or behind a rock or whatever it is, there's a sense of privacy, of safety, of comfort, of enclosure. It's the same way that like a fire, even if that fire is in the middle of an open field, it sort of creates this like bubble of light, and you can kind of be inside that bubble of light, or you can be away from that bubble of light. So, you know, I would call that idea at least is, so people call that, prospect and refuge in design. You could call that enclosed spaces and open spaces or something like that. But I think that a great space is going to have elements of both, right? So they're going to have open spaces that you can kind of explore and mill around and be out in the public, and then close, you know, more kind of enclosed private spaces where you can have a little bit more personal space. You know, you have your extrovert spaces and your introvert spaces. So
Yeah.
I think that's one thing that does that in nature. It's like it's very apparent when you walk around in nature that people enjoy both those things. So we have to offer those in our homes and buildings. I think that's a good one. You know, I think another thing that makes good design is, this is like so basic, but it's just like visual interest, right? Like, do I see things when I walk into a space that are intriguing to me? Or is everything just totally the same that I've seen before, right? So like, are there things that you can do? And this is on a really simple, small level, but like just the doorknobs or the light switches or like the type of desk you can use or the stair railing, right? Like, are there things there that give me a sense of, oh, wow, this is a little bit different than I've seen before. And this is more intentional than the last office building that I walked through, the last home that I walked through, right? And like, I really like the way that they took the time to, you know, add extra detail in the casework for the doors, or, you know, whatever that is. Taking the time to be intentional about a few small details really in any kind of building does not have to break the bank on a budget, and can make all the difference in terms of the perception.
Okay. It's really interesting. I know when you were in high school, you played in some bands.
Yes.
What did you play?
Played guitar and sang. So I was really like a singer-songwriter, performer, front guy.
What kind of style? Give me an idea of your style.
Sure. So I started definitely with just like rock, classic rock, that kind of thing. And then we moved more into the band that I was in college, was like a sort of like a funk rock band, like maybe most similar to the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Actually,
nice.
like a perfect college party band, actually. And so that's what I thought I was going to do, is music, like at least all through college. And so I actually moved with my college band to Nashville, Tennessee to make it, as you do.
No way.
And that band immediately broke up, as bands do. But it was, you know, it was fortunate timing. I spent a couple years, unintentional years, let's say, having a good time with friends and in the restaurant business and dabbling in music. And then, you know, right around the time that Nashville really started to take off real estate wise, and I started to see all these nice new homes go up around me. That's when, you know, my curiosity peaked in regards to real estate. And so it was great timing. It worked out well.
Okay, so this is really interesting. So you moved to Nashville, right? And
Yes.
That's where all the ballers are in terms of music, right?
That is where basically all of country music, which has basically become the pop music in the United States,
Right.
created. All of
Yes.
it is made there, right? And
But the talent level of the people there is tremendous, isn't it?
it's nuts. It's nuts, and you totally take it for granted when you live here. You can just go anywhere and see like unbelievably talented people, you know, at so many different venues, restaurants, bars, funky tonks, that kind of thing, all over the place. Like I don't know, the talent level of, you know, the barista, right, at your coffee shop is probably off the charts relative to another city. It's a really, really special place. And I forget how special it is. And then you like travel to other cities and you realize, oh, like live music is just not nearly as much of a thing. So
let me ask you a question about that then. When you got to Nashville and you began to compare your musical ability to the mean or the average or whatever like that, what did you find?
That I was very average. That everybody is really good. And it also, you know, I really started to realize I mean, we could go back to the planting and watering seeds
Yeah.
analogy, right?
Yeah.
That everybody that really makes it in that industry, for the most part, they've been working really hard at it for about a decade.
Yeah.
And they built the right relationships. They've written songs with the right writers. They've made friends with they have the right publishing deal. They're friends with the right label. They're friends with radio promoters, whatever it is. It's a cumulative and compounding effort that, at some point, one song or some effort breaks through. So I realized, wow, you really have to love this so much that you're, basically willing to live in poverty for a decade to make it as a musician. I mean, there's certainly exceptions to that, but that I would say that's to be expected if that's what you want to do.
Hey, this is Eric. Thank you so much for listening to my conversation with Hans. And I'm going to stop here for a second and tell you about my book, Construction Genius. This is such a great book. I tell you, I was chatting with one of my clients, and he was telling me how he marks the book up and takes notes and reads it and rereads it. He shared it with people in his organization. And that's what you should do. You should go and buy my book on Amazon because it's excellent. It's effective, hands-on, practical, simple, no BS, leadership, strategy, sales, and marketing advice for construction companies. I've got 20 years of experience working with contractors. I know what you guys go through, and I've encapsulated all of that experience in this book. And it's only $19.99 on Amazon. Boom. But wait, there's more. If you purchase 10 or more copies, shoot me an email, eric@constructiongenius.com. Say, Eric, I bought 10 copies of your book. And what I'll do is I'll come in to your company via Zoom, and we'll do a 1-hour question and answers session and an exclusive leadership development topic specifically for your company. And so if you buy those 10 copies, it'll cost you around $200, but you will get a value of $3,500. That's how much an hour of my time is for one of these types of calls. So it's a killer deal for you, and you'll get tremendous value. Go out to Amazon right now and buy Construction Genius. Now let's get back to my conversation with Hans. Let me ask you this, just in light of the, something like, so professional, when I think of professional sports, when I think of music,
Yep.
Those are tremendous, they're meritocracies in many ways, but also
Yes.
the relationships are tremendously important.
Mhm.
In other industries, you might not have to be the best of the best to do tremendously well. But from my outside perception in music, to really make it and to make a living doing it, or
Yes.
to do tremendously well, there's only a small portion of people who do that. Am I correct in that, or am I misperceiving that?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think, maybe in some ways that is changing. I've really seen what a lot of people can do with social media. It seems
Yeah.
like I'm floored at the followings that many musicians, like on Instagram or something like that, have, where
Yeah.
they definitely don't, there's no hit, right? There's no radio song, there's no massive song, there's no big royalty checks or anything like that. But they're just good enough that they can get on there every day and sort of market themselves that way. So that is maybe democratizing music success a little bit
Yes.
more recently. And I'm pleased to see that. I think that's a great thing for a lot of musicians. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely seems like a winner take all industry for the most part, at least if you're seeking to be a performer and someone that's kind of pursuing the limelight. There's a lot of ancillary things that you could do, right? Like you could work in music. I have a ton of friends that work in music publishing or record labels or booking agencies, all that kind of stuff, right? Where you can have a little bit more predictable, stable, steady lifestyle, but you are not getting on a stage every night with a microphone and, getting people excited. So it depends what you want.
Okay, so it's interesting because the reason I brought this up is because you speak a lot about the music of design.
Oh, yeah.
And the relationship between music and design. So you say that design is a lot like music.
Mm-hmm.
Give us an idea of what you mean by that.
Yeah. I think the best through line there is, if you think how a song compares to a home, or a well-designed home, I should say, right? If you go in a well-designed home, there is a rhythm to that home, just like there is a rhythm in song. So, right, in song, you have a rhythm, you have some kind of count, something that's keeping beat. You have, you have a snare drum, you have the strums of a guitar, you have a hi-hat, you have, chords and a keyboard, right? There's something that is giving you a sense of momentum as you walk through the song. And then as you venture through that song, there's moments of drama and color and ups and downs and dynamics, right? The same exact thing, I think, for a really well-designed house. There's a rhythm that you're going to feel when you walk in the front door, right? You open the front door, there's this certain kind of doorknob. You walk in, you see some sort of reference to that type of doorknob in the stair railing. You walk in, I don't know, through your open living room and kitchen, and you see more references to that similar style. There's, I don't know, this certain kind of portrait in the wall or something like that, that's our big showpiece. That's our chorus, right? In the song or something like that. We walk upstairs, we see more of that similar, I don't know, like door hardware again, for example, right? Like continuing the beat of that song. We see another art piece when we go into the master bedroom that kind of references the art piece downstairs.
But do you think people notice? Do you think people notice that, or is it just subconscious?
They don't. It's totally subconscious. Like nobody. The problem with me, right, is like I analyze everything to create.
Oh, great! It's so interesting. So you got to go with it. Go with it. It's
yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So like when I listen to music, I'm like thinking about how they made that song.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like in the studio, how it's constructed. And it's the same thing when I look in house. I'm like, oh, there's like, there's this level of detail in, your trim and your casework. And they did this with the cabinets and I don't know, this process for creating this finish on concrete floors or whatever it is. A well-designed house, I think, is like it's a symphony or a song that you walk through that has a beat and a rhythm that in some way tells you a story. You don't have to get that whole story. You don't necessarily have to start at the beginning and end at the end, right? But there's some sort of like through line that gives you an idea of, oh, this is an intentional place. I think everybody gets that when you look at, if you go to a resort, right? Like if you go to a resort, there's a very clear, you are at this place. These are the kinds of umbrellas that we use. These are the kinds of chairs that we use. These are the name tags the employees wear. This is the type of scent we have. This is the type of music we have, right? Like you have this really, really strong sense of place that tells you some kind of story. I don't know what that story is, right? It could be like, welcome to Tahiti. It could be like, we hope you relax here. It's a variety of different things, but it's a very, very highly curated, intentional message. And I think that like, the best design spaces, right? They do that. If you think about hospitality, if you go into a restaurant, right? Like there's a very clear and strong aesthetic. Like the reason people like to go out to eat is not just because a place has great pizza. It's because the environment at the restaurant feels so much more compelling than at their house.
Yes.
And they want to get out of the house and like do something. That's another thing. I'm sorry, I'm not staying on topic here, but
go. It's fine.
Like, I think we should take hospitality design and bring hospitality design into residential interiors, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, in a restaurant, restaurant is a really hard business.
Yes.
Okay? One of the hardest business, right?
Yes,
like,
it is.
Super, super low margin. It's very difficult to control costs, like crazy turnover.
So for restaurants, number one, bankruptcy, construction, number two. Go ahead.
Oh, go on. Yeah, like brutally hard business. And there is a very strong incentive in restaurants and in hospitality to get it right? Mm-hmm. Like you need to captivate people immediately they walk in. So one, they like stay at your restaurant and finish a meal and spend money there. But two, then they like come back and keep coming back and tell their friends that they had a good experience, and then leave you a good Google review or whatever. And that compounds. So they have a financial incentive to get mood and design and aesthetics right. Yeah. And there is not a financial incentive in a major way. At least, I mean, there's certainly not for, homeowner. Mm-hmm. There probably is for people that build spec construction or, custom homes. I think there definitely is for commercial construction, but I think that's something that people should pay attention to. It's like the people who have, the most on the line are going all in on aesthetics and mood. And I don't think that necessarily, yes, if you have an unlimited budget, right, easier to create that than not. But right. I think a lot of that is just being intentional about, let's use the same light bulbs in a space. Let's not have like blue, super white light bulbs over the bar and then really dim light bulbs next to the table. Just simple little cohesive stuff like that, right? That I see that people miss all the time, I think is huge. There was a guy, he was building spec construction in Nashville. He started kind of soon after I got interested in real estate. So it's like 10 years ago.
Right.
He was doing homes they were very unique homes. He was designing everything. And it was like his version of mid-century modern. His name is Bob Butler. His company's Profile and Principle. He doesn't really do that much stuff anymore. But yeah, it was like his take on the, I don't know, like case study homes and, things that you'd see in like Palm Springs or whatever. But he was very good at using inexpensive materials very tastefully. He would do pre-finished bamboo floors. He would do IKEA kitchens. He would do walls made out of cinder block. And I walk in those homes and I was like, man, this is so cool. This is unlike anything else that I've seen in new construction, at least at the time. A bunch of people copied him after he started doing it.
Right.
That's what happens. But I was like, this guy he's just dialed in on the aesthetic. He's totally aesthetics first, and he finds a way to use inexpensive materials intentionally to get that aesthetic. So yes, if you have an unlimited construction budget, on a custom home or something like that, that's maybe the easiest way to make stuff look great. But still, you see plenty of custom homes and they look crazy, right? Like there's too much detail, they're too ornate, they're too extravagant, right? Like it's not this intentional thing. It's just like, let's throw money at a problem and try to finish it. So I do think that that's the value of a good designer, or just somebody with taste in the process, is to come in and figure out how to balance out the home, create nice ratios of, detail and plane, of, a texture and smooth, right? Strike a balance throughout the home, compose that song, and create something that feels like a cohesive story that I want to, listen to again or walk through again.
So that you said something interesting there. You used the word taste, and I think I know what you mean by that.
Yeah.
But it's a very sort of intuitive thing.
Yes.
But in what ways have you developed your taste as it pertains to design over time? Let me give you an analogy, right?
Yeah.
So like back in the day when I'm listening to music, right? When I started listening to music, I was listening to The Clash, I was listening to The Smiths, I was listening, back in the 80s,
Good
right?
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, no, killer stuff, right? But like today, I'm listening to Bach like way more than I listen to that music now. And back in the day, if you'd said listen to Bach, I'd have been like, no way, man, I'm not going to listen to Bach. But my taste has developed over time. How does someone develop their design taste over time?
It's a really good question. I mean, I think design is always a balance between what is trendy and re-emerging and popular and new, such as, The Clash was at one time, and what is enduring and classic and, sort of unwavering, like Bach. And you have to use both. If you go and just build a Bach house, that's great. And there's people that want a Bach house, but they want what they want is they want a Bach house with elements of whatever 2024's version of The Clash is.
That's a good one. I like that. Go on.
So I think that's always a dance as a designer, is to say, what is popular right now? Like one thing I'll say, I love like big open white spaces and everything like that. And it's been such a thing in, especially residential and definitely commercial construction for the last decade or so. It seems like we're starting to move away from that. We're starting to see a little bit more separation in spaces, a little bit less use of like all white, everything, that really minimalist look, back to some more kind of traditional detailed things. And I'm seeing other things in like, I don't know, like upholstery, for example. Like I had a tweet about this last night. Like I'm seeing like all this like really graphic, heavily patterned upholstery coming back. And that was not a thing just a couple of years ago. Nobody was doing it.
Yeah.
And that's like I don't know, that probably hasn't been a thing since like the 80s.
Right. It's interesting because that kind of goes back to what you first began talking about. So the white space is giving you that open sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then the tapestries and the textures giving you that closed sense. So it's like we go back and forth from the open to the closed in a certain way.
We oscillate. Another point related to this that I just want to hit on is there's enticement when something is new, right? So, and I feel like this is where you really have to practice as a designer. Whenever anything's new and you haven't seen it before, it's always going to look good, right? And then the question is, or it's always going to look exciting. And again, it like tickles your eye. You haven't seen this before.
Yeah, yeah.
So what you kind of have to figure out as a designer is that thing going to look bad in 5 years or 10 years, you know? And so like, do I want to lean into trends and be sort of relevant to what people want to see and what people are you know, excited for and anticipating in, you know, this year and years to come? Absolutely.
Right.
But then I also probably want to stay away from things that are like overly trendy. And I think a way to do that is becoming, you know, somewhat versed in like architecture design history, right? And
Yes.
you realize maybe this is just something, this is something out of the 30s. This is like Art Deco, right? That's reiterating itself. So if that's the case, it's been a big thing before. It's part of a lot of classic buildings that people really love. It's probably a safe thing to lean into.
Yeah.
Versus if this is just some sort of like arbitrary, trendy TikTok thing, you know, maybe I want to lean less into it. So I don't know how profound I'm being there, but.
Well, I just had a thought there. It's interesting about our taste evolving. If design is linked to who we are as people, over time, as your understanding of who you are as a person or what it means to be a human being changes and evolves, that's how your taste begins to change and evolve.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's really true. And I think that as you grow, as you age, as you mature, there's probably less of a need to prove yourself. I remember my grandmother saying this, and I just thought, man, it's so interesting. She's always somebody that has, had a beautiful home, but like lots of these like beautiful outfits, right? She had a great closet full of all this cool stuff. And she said to me, or this is probably 10 years ago, she was like, you know, like I have all the clothes I need. I love all my clothes and I don't need to buy any more clothes at all. Like I never really need to buy another outfit again because everything I have, I like and I know what I like.
Right.
You know, and that's pretty cool to like have this collection of stuff that you're just like, I'm very comfortable in my taste. I'm not going to change my taste. I don't need to like update it. I'm not going to live long enough to need to update this. So I think that you could probably say the same thing about a younger designer, right? You need to break out. You need to like really, I don't know, like make a splash and really, you know, maybe like kind of shock people or something and get attention about yourself whereas as you grow and mature, I think maybe you could be a little bit more into this is what I like, this is what I don't like. I care way less what's trendy. I just care about what's, you know, classic and good and I like and what my clients will want. And I don't need to lean into novelty and trend as much. So it's hard to say like what the, you know, right or wrong approach is, but the world's a noisy place. And if you don't have a business, you need to catch attention somehow in the earlier part of your career. And as a designer, it's easier to do that by not being safe than being safe.
Yeah, so this is interesting because this brings up another thing that we can think about in terms of the relationship between music and business. So I'm going to throw out two bands here, and I'm sure you'll remember both. First one is Four Non Blondes, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, what pops into your head when I say that?
And I said, hey, yeah.
Right. So that's their one hit, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Radiohead. What pops into your head when I say radio?
Creep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, listen. They both came out with those records at the same time, and initially,
was that the same year?
It was right around the same year.
Yeah.
It was around the same year. And initially, both bands were thought of as kind of one-hit wonders, right? So Radiohead had Creep, and Four Non Blondes had What's Up. Now, what's interesting about that is that is obviously the trajectory of both bands is completely
different.
Couldn't
have more different careers.
Yeah. Now, what's interesting is that one thing that Radiohead have done, they've over time really aggressively looked to reinvent themselves.
Every record is different. Oh yeah.
Yeah, and so particularly when you go from Paranoid Android,
Mhm.
that one album, and then you go to Kid A, right? So you that's a complete
Different
change.
band.
Different band.
Yeah.
And they forced themselves to do that, and it was a tremendous amount of risk. How does
Yes.
that then relate to the career of a designer? Because, they could have kept putting out creep-like music and probably done perfectly well, but from their own perspective as creative beings, so to speak, they weren't happy with that, and they forced themselves to do other things. How does that relate to a designer's career, perhaps? Or even the career of anyone when it comes to whatever you're doing?
It's such a good question. I mean, I think that there's risk in there's pros and cons.
Yeah.
So you can go and be constantly reinventing yourself, but the problem, of course, is like we look at Radiohead and we say they were very successful in doing that, but maybe if they had reinvented themselves as a, I don't know, like Korean pop band, like we wouldn't be having this conversation. So
Right.
here's actually what it boils down to. It's taste.
Yes.
Right. And that is, I was just listening to one of my absolute favorite podcasts, this guy, Greg Eisenberg. He has a podcast called the Startup Ideas Podcast. He recently changed the name on it, but he was talking to, I think, Alex Lieberman on that podcast who started Morning Brew. And they were talking about taste and talking about hiring for taste and like how taste, like when we talk about taste, we act like taste is this objective thing.
Yeah.
That you have taste or don't. But really the way that we measure taste is totally subjective.
Right.
Like the way that we say if somebody has good taste is we are rating their taste based on our taste of their taste.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those like ethereal things. I think you can definitely develop your taste, you can definitely get better at taste, but like it's definitely something that you're just kind of, it's a that is given to you by God or not,
Right. But also it has to do with the inputs that you're allowing yourself to, you're obviously the inputs have a tremendous amount of impact on that.
Yeah, I think
What you're choosing to listen to, so to speak.
I think that's really true, and I think what you're choosing to listen to at that formative time,
Yes.
where you kind of you solidify your taste a little bit more, and then you start like projecting that taste. Yeah, I think that's really critical. But
So
yeah, it's like so whoever is in charge of Radiohead,
Yeah.
right, which is Johnny Greenwood and
Tom York.
Tom York, right? Like those guys, I would say, what do those guys have? Like those guys just have awesome taste,
Right.
and they could kind of do like whatever they like. If they made furniture, it'd probably be pretty cool.
Yeah. That's interesting. Do you remember Massimo, the designer Massimo?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a guy who was very eclectic in the stuff that he worked on. He did chairs, he did subway signs, he did the interiors of churches and stuff like that.
Yep.
And so he had taste that was able to transcend, the one bucket to multiple buckets.
Yes. Yeah. No, I think that's so true. I mean, it can be. Yeah, it's a superpower it's like you kind of have it initially, and then you can certainly like grow it and expand upon it. But it really like, I mean, what if you think about it, it's just your opinion, and that allows you to make a decision on something. More of this, less of this, right? And then you could theoretically take it into a bunch of different industries and apply it. What was I going to say? I'll give you another example on the other side, right?
Yeah.
I remember I was over when I was still messing around with music. I was playing bass in this band.
Yeah.
And I was over at we were over at this guy's house having band practice, and he lived with this guy that wrote for the Nashville Scene, which is like our local cultural, magazine, and they would do album reviews and shows and everything like that. So this guy is like total extreme music nerd, right? Just like wall to wall piles of vinyl and everything. And he had a bunch of music coffee table books. And the two coffee table books that like were on the top of his coffee table, one was U2 and one was the Rolling Stones. And these are both like very much legacy bands that have been around for decades. And it was interesting because I looked through both of them while we were just hanging out there. And the Rolling Stones, I feel like, are an example of like, we're kind of going to stay the same band.
Right. R&B.
Like, we're not going to, right? And we're going to kind of look the same and sound the same through decades. Like we've got this like piratey thing
Yeah,
going on. It's that aesthetically, at least the way that we look, you know what I mean? Like throughout, right? It's like the bandanas and the scarves and the open shirts and like, you know, all that, I don't know, lots of bracelets.
It's the pirate / heroin chic.
Exactly. Exactly. And then it's interesting because I'm looking at U2 and I was like, oh, wow, U2 really leaned into the fashion of each decade. Maybe a little bit less so like their music.
Right.
But it was like, oh, wow, like in the, you know, I don't know, in the 80s, you guys were very 80s, and in the 90s, you guys are very 90s. And in the 2000s, you were, I don't know, early 2000s or whatever, like just wearing the stuff that everybody was wearing. I wish I could articulate that a little bit better.
I got you.
It struck me as like the Rolling Stones really are like, you know, kind of hell-bent on this is who we are. Yep. And this is our sound and our aesthetic and the way that we look, and we're rolling with this works. Whereas like U2 is a more maybe closer to Radiohead or something like that, where they change, at least aesthetically, over the decades. So
that's interesting, because what that tells us is that the evolution of a style doesn't necessarily have to happen. You know, it's like if you found your niche and that niche is something that you like and other people like, yeah, go with it. Or you could go to
totally
evolution part of it as well.
That's the thing. There's not like a right answer on should you evolve. Like some people should. There's plenty of artists that I see today, right, that are just like they're continuing to. I won't say any of them because that's mean, but like you should just hang it up.
Yeah, totally.
Like you've just been like trying to be the center of attention for too long, and it's like it's just starting to look bad, and like too much plastic surgery and like too much trying to reinvent yourself and mixing with the coolest producers and stuff like that. Just like go out on top. I know it's like it's easier said than done, right? Like talk to Michael Jordan, but you know, like I don't know, hang it up when you've had a couple really good decades. Don't want to stop.
It's interesting. Just keeping with that music thing, I think of another guy that I've listened to a little bit. Have you ever heard of Charlie Peacock?
I have not heard of Charlie Peacock.
Okay, so Charlie Peacock's a guy
I'll write this down.
Yeah, okay, so Charlie Peacock's a guy who was he's a Nashville guy, actually.
Oh,
and
okay,
well,
cool.
No, originally he was out here in the Sacramento area. He's actually from a town called Yuba City, which is up north from here, which is hilarious. That he's from Yuba City, and
yeah.
Anyway, he got into like he was in CCM for a while, the Christians.
Cool.
Right?
Yes.
But he was, you know, he produced people like Amy Grant and all those kind of things. And he was also
was he primarily a producer?
Well, see, that's the thing.
Okay.
He started off as an artist, right? And then he had the CCM phase.
Yeah.
And now he's really a producer. And so what I think he did is like he got to a point in his career where he's like, I don't want to do this pop stuff anymore. That's not really me. He's more of a jazz guy now.
Yeah.
And he went from in front of the camera, so to speak, to behind the camera, to producing. And so that was an interesting evolution for him.
Yeah, I think you can do that. You know, I would also say there's a lot of people that have done that did the opposite.
Yeah.
Right. That they wrote songs. I mean, like Glenn Campbell or somebody, right? Like wrote songs for a bunch of people, and then like
Willie Nelson, right? Willie Nelson was that.
I mean, so many people like Kanye West did that, right? He produced a bunch of songs for Jay-Z, and then like launched her, and so many musicians. So yeah, I think depends. Like I think whatever you do, that is one thing that I think about. Like if we go back to Rolling Stones, right? Like doing the same thing since the 60s.
Yeah.
Long time. I don't know. Does that get bored? You know, does that get bored? Like, do you want, how excited are you to go out there and play Start Me Up? You know,
right.
I don't know, every night. Like, I feel like I get bored of it, but maybe not if there's, you know, I don't know, 30,000 people cheering for you or something like that, no matter what. But I think, yeah, like for creatives, right? There's a desire to evolve and change. And that's why so many of them do it. And sure, there's a few, you know, Bruce Springsteen's or Rolling Stones or whatever, right? That kind of like find their thing and stick with it and carry it through their careers. But yeah, I think, I don't know, inherently creative, right? You're going to do something, you're done with the project, you kind of get dissatisfied with it and you do something else.
On to the next thing.
Yes. Yeah.
On to the next thing. Hans, I feel that we could go for hours here. Tell us a little bit more about what you do and the services that you provide, and who should contact you and how they can contact you.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I really started a consulting business a few years ago, helping people with short-term rentals. I would basically stand up short-term rentals and, design everything that went into those amenities, everything like that. So that's kind of where I started. And as just I've grown on social media, so I'm on Twitter, but my Instagram as well. We've just gotten into a lot more projects, and so we've done a lot of residential interiors and some like commercial projects as well.
Mhm.
So, the biggest thing that I look for in working with somebody is just somebody that's willing to do something, a little bit exciting and take chances. But I do like larger, longer term projects. That's definitely my favorite thing, because you really get to sink your teeth in. And yeah, so things like apartments or commercial builds out are that would be the preferred client for me.
So let's say someone's purchasing a building, an apartment building, and they want some help with the design of that
Exactly.
apartment building. Okay.
And then I can work with you for a year to like flesh something out that's really super, super compelling.
Excellent. And how can people get in touch with you?
Probably the best way, you could just you just go on my website. So it's hanslorei.com, HANSLOREI.com. I'm on Twitter at Hans Lorei, and then I'm also on Instagram at Hans Lorei Design. But any of those ways are great ways to follow me. And I have an email list too. If you've listened this far, you're probably a little bit of a creative design nerd, and you probably would really like my email. So you should sign up for my email. I send it every Saturday.
Excellent. All those links will be in the show notes. Hans, quick, two last questions, and they may be related.
Yeah.
I'm going to Nashville. What's the one music spot I need to go to?
Easy.
Go ahead.
It's Robert's Western World. It is a beloved honky tonk that I think it's been run by the same guy for like 20 years.
Yep.
But it's on Broadway. I can't remember exactly what block, but it's among the honky tonks, among the neon. And it's like walking into 1950 when you go in there. So like everybody has their nudie suit on, right? They're playing that like, kind of old timey country. You'll hear a lot of like Hank Williams and that kind of stuff in there. You can get a Pabst Blue Ribbon and a fried bologna sandwich for like $6.
Nice.
There's people there's people swing dancing. It's just like it's this amazing time capsule. And it's just like the music and the food environment, everything's so well curated. So that's by far my favorite place.
That's great.
Robert's Western World.
That's great. And you answered the second question. What should I eat? I'm getting a fried bologna sandwich at Robert's Western World.
At Robert's Western World. Exactly.
Cool. Hans, thank you for coming on the show. Love the conversation. I do wish you all the best.
Great pleasure. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you for listening to my conversation with Hans today. I will see you at Robert's Western World next time we're all in Nashville. Feel free to share this episode with other people who you think would benefit from listening to it. And I'd like you to give Construction Genius a review and rating wherever you get your podcasts. The reason why is because that helps us to be seen across the internet. There's so many people who could benefit from listening to this show, and you can play a part in that by giving us a rating and a review. And that will help more people to be attracted to the podcast, listen, benefit, and grow their construction businesses. Thank you so much for listening today. I'll catch you on the next episode.